What's going on, guys? Chandler here. So this is going to be my new segment on my YouTube channel called First Listen Review that is taken from my $5 tier full album reactions. So I react to the entire album, and then at the very end I give my overall thoughts and initial thoughts and a score on the album as a whole. So again, if you do like what you see and want to support the channel going forward, head over to patreon.com/ChandlerBurtonEntertainment. This is exclusive to the $5 tier. Again, you get a full album reaction, review, and a whole bunch of other perks as well if you guys are interested. And again, there's always a link down below in the description and in the pinned comment. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the review, and thank you all so much for watching. Alright, my friends, again, for the Fallen Dreams and their self-titled album, I just realized this is another band that stepped away for like 5 years. You know, we've been having a lot of bands do that. Miss May I did it, Pierce Seville did it. There's a lot of bands that are that stepped away for a while, but turns out they make pretty good music when they take their time. So again, in my personal opinion, when like you do a self-titled album, again, this has got to be like your most iconic material to date compared to everything else that you've done. So I'm really hoping that they can live up to the self-titled name. That's why if I ever made an album, I would be really worried to do a self-titled, because I'd be like, dude, I don't know if I can hold up to that, because that's how I personally just see it. For example, you know, like for me, like Metallica, the Black Album, their self-titled, I think is a wonderful album. Some people may disagree on that, but you know, again, like if you're naming it self-titled, you know, it's something that you really gotta, you know, step up to the plate and really produce some wonderful music. Again, I have not heard one song from this album cycle. These guys kind of fell off the radar for me here until I saw a few other people check it out, and I was like, okay, I want to jump on this because I used to listen to these guys a lot. So without further ado, let's crack open a Zoa. Oh, Lord, get me through this day. That was good. Okay. For the Fallen Dreams, self-titled, first song is Reanimate. Let's pop it off here in 3, 2, and 1.
A few moments later.
Oh, Dad. I love that, man. I don't know about y'all, but I really enjoyed that. I liked it a lot, man. I really enjoyed it. Maybe one of the reasons is I haven't heard one single song from this album, but I've heard so many good things about it. So maybe that kind of like helped me enjoy it a little bit more. I'm not entirely sure, but man, from like a musical standpoint, this is like Chandler core at its finest. Like everything I love about music is essentially for the Fallen Dreams self-titled. So again, I'm not, you know, I have a lot of high praise. I do have a little bit, you know, some cons, I guess, some stuff that, you know, that can be improved upon, but overall, man, I can't help but say it, but I love this album. I thought it was great. I'm going to do my first listen review. That is coming up next, so stick around for that. All right, my friends. So again, we just got done jamming for the Fallen Dreams and their self-titled album on a rising empire. Again, this band disappeared. I don't know about disappear, but they haven't really put out any music for what I've seen in like 5 years, from 2018 to 2023. So I absolutely love this, man. I'm pretty familiar with their album 6 that came out in 2018 and their album Backburner. Those were the two albums that I was really familiar with these guys. And I have to say, they definitely broke out of that Risecore feel, man. I thought this was a stellar album. So I'm definitely excited to talk about some of my pros. We'll go over some things that I kind of felt like could be improved upon, my top 3 songs and a score, and we will go from there. So let's go ahead, of course, and start with the pros. Pro number 1 is that I really like the different vocal styles that the vocalists brought to the table. There's a lot of rapping on this album. Maybe not, it is kind of rapping. I'll just say it is rapping, and it's pretty cool. There's a lot of songs that on there, which again could kind of be, you know, may throw off some people here because there is a lot of songs with that aspect in it, but I really enjoyed that. I also thought the screaming and the low growls were really good. From what I remember, as I said, I really didn't like the screaming on 6 that much. I just thought they just didn't sound that great from what I remember. It's been a couple of years since I've listened to that album. Overall, I enjoyed it, but I just thought the vocals were kind of weak from what I remember. But I need to eat my words to say the vocals on this were great. The low screams, and again, the singing on this was awesome too. So like incorporating all three of those styles into this, for me personally, it worked pretty well. I thought that was really cool. Kind of, you know, obviously Before the Fallen Dreams, it's not like a crazy technical, you know, type of band. So adding in those different vocal styles, I think really helped the song shine a little bit more. And I thought that was a really cool aspect of these songs. Another thing I really like about this song is that every chorus on here, for the most part, is incredible. It definitely had a Bad Wolves vibe to it here. Again, I know a lot of people don't really seem to like Bad Wolves. I actually like him better now with the new vocalist here. I think his voice fits that music a little bit better, in my personal opinion. So again, Bad Wolves' last album, Dear Monsters, I thought was actually a really solid album through and through. I love the choruses on that. I do love good rock songs, and I feel like For the Fallen Dreams took that aspect of really good, like, hooky rock choruses, but also had, like, you know, those metalcore riffs, something like Wage War, I guess you could say, which is weird. I always compare bands to Wage War, because Wage War has some really sick riffs, but it's cool they kind of incorporated that metalcore sound, but also have that big rock sound as well. So I thought that was really cool. Again, the choruses on here are stellar. In my opinion, they made me feel something. I just felt nostalgic listening to this music. It made me feel really good. As I mentioned, like, the singing kind of just gave me, like, that dopamine hit of, like, it's like a healthy dopamine hit where I just felt really good after listening to all these choruses. I thought that I love when music does that, because again, music truly has helped me and saved my life for the most part, and so I really love the aspect. I love the singing on this album. I also think this album is incredibly well paced. I don't think there's a moment where I was like, okay, we need to get on with it, we need to go. Every song had its time to shine. It didn't feel overly long. It was just paced really, really well, which a lot of people don't think that as a pro, but it's like sometimes albums do drag, and sometimes I'll admit to you guys, when I listen to an album, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, where it's like, okay, I kind of want the song to end with long outros, a really long intro. I'm like, let's just wrap this up. Let's just get this going. But none of these songs had that. It was very well paced. It was a very enjoyable listen throughout. And my last thing I will say, again, I've listened to a lot of their older material, and I will say for a first time listen as of right now, and maybe this will change as I listen to it more throughout the year, I definitely plan on listening to this album a lot. I would say this is definitely worthy of the self-titled. It's not changing the game by any means, like it's not changing metalcore for what it is, but I thought this album was great. I thought it wasn't like really fresh or new, but it just was everything I love about music in particular, and I love this style of metalcore, and so for me, this album I think is worthy of the self-titled. I thought they did a really good job. The whole album is without its faults here, so I do have a couple of cons, maybe a little bit of a devil's advocate here when it comes to the cons. So I would say, number one, a lot of the songs do follow that similar structure. It's usually just it's like verse, chorus, breakdown or bridge, chorus again, and then like the outro. I mean, that's essentially what this album is, but it is done, in my opinion, really well, and I feel like a lot of people are gonna like rail on it for that reason, because they're like, it's predictable, it's not, you know, stuff like that. So if you're going into this album thinking that it's going to change the game, don't expect it to. I think if you just, I don't want to say lower your expectations, because I think this album is really good, you won't be, I think, that disappointed by it. Because again, I think the choruses are really good. Like, music doesn't need to be overly complicated for it to be good. Like, again, we just jammed Periphery's album, Gent Is Not a Genre, which I think that album is full of creativity, but not every band's going to be like Periphery, and so I think that's really cool that bands can kind of do their own thing. So there are some predictable moments in here, and like some structures as well that are kind of similar. Again, kind of with the whole rap thing, I actually thought it was pretty cool, but then again, we kept hearing it over and over, so it kind of lost its steam a little bit when I heard it for like the third or fourth time. I was like, okay, we've already heard this part, let's try something new. But then we didn't really get it towards the end of the album. So again, it's kind of one of those devil advocate things where it's just like, I liked it, I didn't like it, but I'm okay with it, if that kind of makes sense. So that's kind of where I stand with all that here. And I will say, the production on this is not bad. It's pretty decent, but I felt like with a lot of the bigger moments in the song, it would have hit so much better, like if the production was just a little more punchier, especially with like, as I mentioned, the singing on this is so phenomenal. I could see a lot of these songs, like honestly, like I'm not saying to take out the screaming elements of it, but if they just did like a full-on rock song with that type of singing, I think it would be absolutely wonderful to hear on the radio. Just a big rock like stadium. I live in the state of Washington, so I imagine this band, like with big choruses like that, I imagine them playing at the Moda Center in Portland, or like the Tacoma Dome in Tacoma, Washington. So I think that would be, like, I imagine that in my head, and it's like I can imagine hearing these songs live. So the production is good, but I just wish it was a little more punchier to make these songs stand out a little bit more. So my top 3 favorite songs from this album. This is actually really hard because, again, I really, really like this album a lot. I just, so many things about it I love. But I'm going to narrow it down to 3. I'm going to say number 1, Reanimate. Again, as I said in the beginning and throughout the entire reaction, I did not listen to one song off this album. And so hearing Reanimate for the first time really hooked me in, especially with that chorus, as I said. It's really, really good. Good riffs and everything like that also. That song hooking me in, definitely got to be one of my favorites on the album. Thought that was really, really solid. I really like Last One Out. Last One Out, I really liked as well. Again, like the highlight for me is the chorus. Like I thought the song was really cool throughout, but again, the chorus is what really captured my attention. Like I really, again, if you have a good chorus, like a chorus is like you sing that more than like the verses, so you always want to make sure those choruses are really catchy. That's why Micah and I, when we did Defiler, were like, we need to make sure this chorus is catchy, because a lot of people are singing that chorus and they love that part of the song. We have people tagging us on TikTok just singing the chorus because they think it's so catchy. So for me, like the chorus on that really stood out. I thought it was super awesome. And then again, Without You, super heavy, super melodic, great chorus. Again, this was a great song to kind of kick off, saying, hey, the album's coming out here really soon, to kind of bring people back into that fold and get them really excited. Really, really loved all 3 of those songs. Again, this is actually really hard to pick because I legitimately did love every single song on this album. Again, I can't deny my feelings for this album. I loved it. I thought it was really cool. I think it's honestly one of my favorite albums that I've listened to so far this year. As I mentioned before in my other, like, you know, Patreon stuff like that, music was kind of going a little bit slow in 2023. Like January was kind of empty, February was kind of empty for me, at least personally here. Like we did Emarosa and Pierce the Veil, and I always kept saying, like, well, when March hits, a lot of music is going to be coming out. And I feel like out of all the bands that I'm going to be listening to, like upcoming, like within this next weekend or so, I feel like this band is going to get swept under the rug a little bit here. Maybe I'm personally wrong. I hope not, because this album is super, super sick. I mean, it's a really easy listen, especially if you're like obviously into metalcore and that type of music. Like it's got like great vocals, it's got great riffs. Like it's just a really consistently exciting listen for me personally here. Again, this is everything that I love about music. I've talked about in videos before how music has legitimately saved my life, and this style of, like, you know, the metalcore riffs with the rock, you know, heavy rock choruses and those types of things, I really enjoy that about music. That is my sweet spot when it comes to music, and so this album for me personally hit every single point. I don't want to base it on a personal reason why I want to give it a decent score, but for me, I love this album all the way through. I think everything about it is cool. Again, definitely if you're a fan of like Any Given Day, who's on the same label as For the Fallen Dreams, or again something like Bad Wolves, I really think you're gonna like this album. Or if you're a fan of like riffs, like, you know, something from like Wage War, there's definitely some cool metalcore riffs in here as well. I think this album is very well balanced, and I think it's a good gateway album for those who want to get into maybe some heavier music. I think this album is definitely worthy of the self-titled. It is not perfect, but I loved it. I thought it was super, super sick. I'm going to give For the Fallen Dreams self-titled album a 9 out of 10. I loved it, man. I really did. I mean, again, I just loved everything about it, dude. Again, it's not perfect by any means, and some people may say, like, dude, this album is just generic, there's nothing crazy about it, but for me, it did hit me personally, and I thought they did a really good job with this here. Again, worthy of the self-titled.